What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Overdose, the podcast about red pill content shown to people that's not too familiar with red pill, you know, the truth about life, love, etc. Now, today we have a special guest in the building. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Melanie Miranda.
All right. Now, are you getting a little bit more familiar with red pill now that you have done a video or two?
I think I'm getting it down.
Okay. Today's video, we're doing Alexander. You won't believe what these graphs reveal about women. Now, we have no context, so I'm not even going to ask you what do you think about the title, because obviously we don't have no context. So let's jump in the video. You ready?
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Today is an awesome video. I came across some amazing data that tracks changes in sexual attitudes and sexual behavior over decades. This is a real treasure. This kind of data is extremely difficult to find. Anything that tracks trends over decades with any kind of consistency is very rare. Like, look at this graph.
Oh, and I want to preference that he's not a red pill creator. He's just a logical, here's the data of what the true nature of men and women are. I want to preference that.
Okay.
This goes all the way back to 1937, and that is amazing to actually have data tracked for over 80 years. What you're seeing here is the percentage of men and women who were in love with their first sexual partner. Men are in the green and women are in the orange. As you can see, men are pretty consistent. It doesn't really change much. It just sort of hovers around 50% through all the decades. Women, on the other hand, have changed a lot. You can see that there's been this steady decrease, and fewer women have been in love with the man that they lost their virginity to. Back in the late 30s, over 80% of women were in love with their first sexual partner. But by the time you get to 2014, that number had halved to 40%. That is significant because this may be the first time, perhaps in all of human history, that women are now less likely to be in love with a man that they lose their virginity to than men. But of course, they're going to continue with this mainstream myth that when it comes to relationships and sex, men are these disgusting hound dogs.
I already see, like, you over there shaking your head and stuff. What are your thoughts on the very, you know, top of it?
I feel like I'm learning something right now,
Yeah,
first off.
same here. Do you feel like this is true? Like what you see in society and what you see around you and stuff like that?
I want to hear his explanation a little bit more, but
Okay.
I can see how over time, like, you know, with social media being so prevalent right now,
having even more options.
More options and access, that I can see how those numbers are going down.
Okay.
Women are these perfect angels and women are these hopeless romantics, and they'll keep pushing this line despite, you know, the existence of that irritating thing we call actual data. Now, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of graphs in this video, and they all tell a very similar story, which is one of increasing moral degeneracy when it comes to female sexual behavior as the result of cultural changes. So if you like it when women are feminine and modest and they inspire men to be better versions of themselves by leading through example, you're probably going to find this video pretty depressing. But on the other hand, if you like data and you like graphs, you're going to love this video, so stick around. Okay, so continuing with this theme of women sleeping with
Before you get started, do you consider yourself more feminine or masculine?
In the what sense?
Relationship sense. Or even life in general sense. Either one.
I want to say feminine.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
then I find myself kind of thinking more masculine in the sense of, like, I guess just not having found the person that
you want.
that's doing the masculine side of things and having to think that in that sense. Does that make any sense?
No. Try to remix that for me.
I think that women shouldn't have to feel like they're on the masculine side of things. And sometimes you find yourself in situations that cause you to feel that way.
Okay. All right. We'll just leave it at that.
men that they're not in love with. Have a look at this graph. All of the lines that you can see plotted here indicate the year that's being sampled. So you can see the black line goes to 1971, and this green line here refers to 2015. As you can see, in younger women, there has been a massive change. Like just a few decades earlier, only 30% of young women would say that they would be willing to have sex without being in love. That's not that long ago, that's just in 1992. But now, 80% of women say that they don't care if they're in love with the person that they're having sex with. And there's only a tiny minority that look for that prerequisite of love. You can actually plot this trend. You can see that every single year, love gets less and less important when it comes to sex. And there's every indication that that trend is going to continue in the future. Now, you might think that this just indicates changes in sexual attitudes across the whole culture. You know, we're destigmatizing sex, there's less shame, you know, going through this sexual revolution. But if that was true, then it would apply culture-wide, you know, equally to men and women. But if we look at the data, we see that that is clearly not the case. Have a look at these two graphs. What you're seeing here is the percentage of men and women who have had at least 2 sexual partners in the last year. When I'm looking at this data, I always find it most interesting to look at the youngest demographics, the 18 to 24-year-olds, because as the youth of the culture, they are the best barometer for measuring actual changes in attitudes. So if society starts to shift in their priorities and their beliefs, then those changes are going to ripple through the younger people first. Okay. Now you can see that for women, the number hovers around 35%, and that's pretty consistent. It's been that way for a number of decades. So you think, all right, well, that's not really interesting. It hasn't changed, you know, it just stays the same. So that doesn't really indicate any shift in societal attitudes. Except that it does when you realize that for men, there has been a massive shift. And then you start to ask, well, why hasn't there been a corresponding change when it comes to the data for women? So you see here, decades earlier, for men, the number was similar to women's. You know, it hovered around 40%. But now, in 2015, it has halved and is less than 20% for men. That is an incredible statistic. It means that young women are twice as likely as young men to have had 2 sexual partners in the last year. Twice as likely. That is a huge discrepancy, and it reflects women's increased freedom to be able to indulge their hypergamy. At first glance...
Okay, pause. I'm seeing very clearly that the guys that are less valued are getting less sex, and the guys that are more valued gets equal amount as, like, you know, everyone else, and the women are making the options of choosing the higher value men. Do you get that? You get what I'm saying?
A little bit.
Okay, so again, this graph shows that the higher value guys are getting more sex in today's world.
But when you say higher value, I guess that's what I'm confused about.
Oh, so just like, you know, I don't know, the asshole or the guy that's hot in school or whatever is in high school or college, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you see? Or what do you think of the thoughts that he said so far?
I'm really shocked.
Okay. About?
I'm like real quiet over here. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know the numbers were so, you know, twice as likely. That's a pretty big deal for women to be so, you know.
Out there. All right. Yeah.
So, yeah, let's keep watching.
Do you think, well, this doesn't make sense? Why wouldn't the numbers be equal? For every woman that needs to have sex, there should be a corresponding man, so the numbers should be the same. But what you're seeing here is the societal trend for sexual access to be concentrated in the hands of fewer and fewer men. As women feel empowered to indulge their hypergamy, they only want to sleep with the top men, which means that those really high status individuals, those men who sit at the top of the pyramid, are having lots and lots of sex with lots of women, but the average guy is increasingly left out. This is a worrying trend because if it continues, it could lead to civil unrest, you know, because these men are not going to feel invested in society, they're not going to feel invested in their community, and that's going to lead to an increase in antisocial behavior. Now, there are a few other explanations as to why young men are having fewer partners, whereas women are not. One cause is that young women are more likely to be shacking up with older men. Again, this is driven by hypergamy. Women are seeking those top status men, and she might only be 22 years old, but why would she want to be with a 22-year-old boy who hasn't achieved anything yet when the men in their 30s who are, high status and high wealth, they're showing her interest. Like I've said in my other videos, when it comes to
Real quick before he goes to a different subject, do you find that to be true for your friends and the people around you and yourself, or no? That you reach for or go for someone that's maybe a little bit older, has a little bit more status?
It's not necessary for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's older in status. It's
Okay.
just you need to be mentally
There.
on the same level as me, if not more.
Born. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you find that to be true? What about with your friends or the people that's around you?
I would say it's right in the middle. It's like
Okay.
half and half. You know, some people do like the older guys,
Mm-hmm.
and I get it, but I think it comes down to not being ready for someone. Just because they're older and have more status doesn't mean that's the person for you. You know, so
Okay. All right. You must got different friends.
dating. Being in your late teens and early 20s is one of the roughest periods of men, because all of the women of your age group that you're interested in are also the women that every other man of all the other age groups are interested in. And so the competition is fierce, and because you haven't really achieved much in your life, you're sort of at the bottom of the pyramid. Another explanation that is very rarely spoken about is that women are looking at other women as viable sexual options and just leaving men out of the equation altogether. Look at these two graphs. In this top one, you're looking at women who admit that their sexual attraction goes beyond just men. It used to be quite low, hovering at around 10% a few decades earlier, but if you see the figures for 2015, for young women, it has jumped up to 40%. That is a
Damn.
huge percentage of women who are explicitly bisexual, and there's every indication that that trend is going to continue. This bottom graph shows a similar trend. Back in 1992, only 5% of these young women had had a sexual experience with another woman. But come to 2015, that number has quadrupled to 20%. If you're an average guy in your early 20s and you want...
I see you shaking your head over there. What are your thoughts on this graph? Or this piece of information so far?
I don't know. I feel like I'm in class right now.
It does kind of feel like that.
Because I'm just like, wow, I'm amazed.
I just want to ask, do you see it as well as he's explaining the data? Do you see it in your life? Do you see more of your friends or yourself exploring like women, like he just said?
In my circle, not really.
Okay.
But obviously stories and other people that know people, you know what I mean? So not in my immediate circle, but yeah, I've had, heard stories about women seeking other women, and
Do you find that throughout your whole life increasing, or you find that to be just not really?
Yeah, I would say increasing over the years.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, same here.
want to have sex with a woman. It has never been harder. Competition has never been more intense. We are supposedly living in the age of sexual liberation, but for young men, it would be more accurately called the age of sexual frustration. Like, look at these two graphs. You can see here that in 2015, the median number of sexual partners for women aged 18 to 24 was 5. But when you look at this graph for men, you see that their number of median partners is 2.5. This isn't some outlier or anecdotal evidence. This is data taken from an entire population of people, and it shows that young women have had twice as many sexual partners as young men. Like I said, it's the age of sexual liberation for women and the age of sexual frustration for men. So let's look at some other ways that women are becoming more sexually liberated. There's this graph which shows the average age that men and women were when they lost their virginity. The female line is orange, and you can see this continuous downward trend where the age in which women were losing their virginity just gets lower and lower and lower. By 2009, it had gotten to 16 and a half as the average age for women. And that is 11 years ago. There was every indication that the trend was going to continue, so who knows how low it is now. I think we need to ask ourselves, is this a good thing? Is this actually empowering for women to be losing their virginity at earlier and earlier ages? And remember, if age 16 is the average, that means that there are many women who lose their virginity much earlier. Like, for every girl who loses her virginity at age 19, there is another girl who loses her virginity at age 13. I don't know, I might be alone here, but I think that this trend is worrying. This is another interesting graph.
What do you think about all these graphs and this data so far? How is it hitting you? How is it affecting you? I told you he was a lot more.
Yeah, this is really deep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, the whole it's something that's more sacred, and
Okay.
so to see the data that women are twice as many doesn't really,
Correspond with you personally?
yeah.
Okay.
And so, but I everyone sees things so differently that
Mm-hmm.
you know it's not my place to really judge that that's a bad thing by
Gotcha.
any means. It's just, I don't know. It's
So you saying you're much more conservative than the graph, basically.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's, I mean, it's not to say that, you know, women don't have the choices, you know, the free will to, you know.
Okay.
do
So
what
a
they
question
do,
I
but-
would want to throw out there: what do you think is the downfalls or pros to this data?
I don't think that the women are thinking that it's going to cause any problems later on, and I think that it will.
I like that. Okay. Why?
think
Why do you
they're-
think that?
Well, I just,
Well, I think that too. Obviously, a guy doesn't want someone who has, fucking 20 bodies. They want someone that's a little bit less, maybe like, 1 to 5, that
Right.
type of thing. So if you made a girl and she, like you said, the perfect woman, but she had 100 dudes she slept with, no guy really wants that, no matter how good the woman is.
and it's not just to be able to tell that guy I've only slept with these many people, but it's for your own personal, like,
What, safety? What,
not safety, but to feel, you know.
valued? What?
I don't want to say valued because it's saying the opposite. If you do the opposite, like, oh, I don't value myself because I'm sleeping with like that, and that's not true.
Okay.
I just think that giving yourself away to tons of people is probably not going to give you a healthy mindset.
Okay.
So
All right.
I would just be careful. That's
I
what
agree
would
with that.
say.
No,
Be
I agree with
careful.
that.
This shows
100%.
changes in attitudes for what sexual acts women feel are perverse. The green lines are their opinions in 2007, and the orange lines are their opinions in 2015. As you can see, everything across the board is less stigmatized now than it was 8 years ago. Sadomasochism down from 75% to 58%. Group sex down from 64% to 49%. Porn from 25% to 16%. Just look at that entire trend, how much stigma has decreased in a short period, just 8 years. And I don't think I'm being a sexual prude here, but I have to imagine that it's not fantastic news for all the fathers out there that their daughters are now growing up in a society where there's less stigma around anal sex and swinging. In case you're wondering, the study that I was referencing in this video came from Finland. They have a bunch of other really interesting graphs that came along with their study, and I've got a link in the description box below if you want to click on that and check out more info. When should you tell...
Okay. What are your thoughts on that entire data that you just got?
That was deep.
That was deep. So obviously the trend is much more, the higher value dudes are getting more vagina. The women are being more liberated. They're much more not caring about who they have sex with. They just go with the flow. That's basically the two things that I got from that.
Yeah, I just want to say, even if you find your freedoms in doing so or whatever it might be, just be careful.
Be careful with who
Be
you...
careful. I mean, because you don't know how you're going to feel later on.
Gotcha. So think about...
That's just what worries me when I see all these graphs. I'm like, you don't know how you're going to feel later. That's,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little creepy because, like he said, if you have like a daughter or kids or whatever, obviously it's going to be even much worse than what it is now.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So overall, you would say make sure you protect yourself and think about your actions.
Yes, please.
All right. I can respect that. All right. If you enjoyed this video, make sure y'all check out his channel. Link will be in the description below. Where can they find you?
On Instagram, you can find me at It's Melanie Miranda.
All right. It's your boy, Don Jaye. Hit the links in the description below. I'm out. Peace. Bye.